Did your mother's husband ever recant his Stalinism?
He died in a shower of a heart attack at the age of 65, Lou, just to be vivid about it. And this was in the 1980s. My mom did. My mom lived. She died in 2007. So she lived to see a lot. And at the age of 92. So indeed, she did renounce her enthusiasm for the Soviet Union once. Although she used to say to me, "Don't you believe in worker ownership?" I said, "Well, yeah, of course I do. I think it's possible." She latched on that a little bit, but she did indeed. I guess we could do a great documentary about my mom, Lou, but there's probably not enough footage for her. But maybe Maureen Stapleton can play, or Diane Keane, and so on. Just her odyssey. She lost custody of her own kids because she was a communist. So she paid a price. And so that's her story. But indeed, she did renounce her communism because she was in her late 80s and early 90s and getting a little bit feeble. You know me, Lou, I don't want to take advantage of old people. So I didn't really argue with her too strenuously, because when she was saying that, well, she was giving up on the socialist dream, I thought that was good enough. A very nice concession for her to make.
You and your brother were taken out of your mother's custody because she was a communist?
Well, basically, yeah. My father, who was basically an FDR liberal, a very kid born a young child of poor immigrants who became a millionaire in business. He got custody of the kids. My mother had not only been a card-counting communist, under the pseudonym Rhoda Warren. They were all told, use a pseudonym so that you can't be traced too easily. Her pseudonym was Rhoda Warren. My father was able to prove that she was a communist, and on top of that, mainly in reaction to my father's own infidelities, my mother started to sleep with black guys in the party. And I always suspected that black guys were joining the party in order to meet my mom. I think that was maybe the big lure, because most of those black guys, as you know, favor libertarianism. But anyway, so the idea that in the early 1950s, you're not only a communist, but you're committing adultery with black guys, that was bad enough. That was 2 strikes against her. I'll tell you something funny. My mother's FBI file, which I got, from the Freedom of Information Act, they're following her around. And they keep saying in this little memo, we're thinking of approaching her to be a double agent. Double agent being that instead of being that you'll be a turncoat and inform on your fellows. She said on your fellow communists. But she is a deeply immoral woman, and we cannot do that. She's too immoral to be trusted
to be a traitor. She's too immoral to be a traitor.
To be a traitor to her friends. But then I knew where they got this from, because the court ruling. This is in the 1950s. The court ruling, which was. There were 3 divorce trials and 3 custody trials. So I spent a lot of my youth in and out of courtrooms. But anyway, the final court ruling said that while it is not usual to give custody to the father, even when the mother has committed adultery, but this is a deeply immoral woman. In other words, that even though she committed adultery, we would normally give her custody, but she is a deeply immoral woman. And I knew what that meant was that she was a communist and she'd been sleeping with black guys. That made you deeply immoral. And that's why she lost custody. But then it's just funny that the FBI file echoed the opinion of the court. That she was a deeply immoral woman who couldn't approach as a double agent. So she paid a price.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine the pain your mother must have been going through at that time. That's incredible. And just, like you said, later on in life, not, hammering her about her, the Stalinism or communism. It's,
I argued with her pretty vociferously, Lou, throughout. I mean, certainly she lasted a long time, and I did. The way we were was also one of her favorite films. That's Barbra Streisand's a commie, and her boyfriend is Robert Redford, who rejects her because she's too committed. So my mother loved movies with those themes. But probably the Reds most of all. So I argued with her pretty strenuously, but she gave as good as she got, Lou. Come on, she
okay.
she did.
Yeah.
She was pretty feisty. Well, anyway.
If you have a file with the FBI, you're probably some level of badass. Right?
That's a good question, Lou. I've been wanting to do more research into it. I had an Uncle Abe who had a file. It seemed like they were really just going after everybody. My mother quit the party. She'd quit the party because she knew that it would be difficult for her.
And then all the black men quit. Like they're like, they had no more. It was like, what's going on? We need a diversity and inclusion council here.
Precisely. There was a big exodus from the party at that point on the part of the African American community and a number of Jews like my mom. But my mother quit strategically, but then they were still following her around because, as you perhaps know, the Rosenbergs who were, the Rosenbergs who were executed for being atom bomb spies, they had quit the party years before. And of course, that was part of the ruse that in order to be a spy, you confuse the powers that be by quitting the party. So the FBI was not trusting anybody. If you'd been a commie, then maybe you'd still working underground for the party, And I do use the joke that I don't even know the source of it, that 1 out of every 10 members of the Communist Party was an FBI agent, and the joke is you could tell who the FBI agents were in the party because they were the only ones who paid their dues on time. And so it was heavily infiltrated, and that's why I never thought that the House Un-American Activities Committee really did any purpose to investigate communists. I mean, they knew who was a communist. They 1 out of 10 FBI agents was a communist. They were monitoring their every move. And of course, for what it's worth, these communists, my mother included, they were not violent people. They did believe in electoral politics. They put up their candidates. They didn't blow up buildings. For what that's worth, I mean, they did. I get a pass from my fellow libertarians, I guess, because everybody says, "Wow." I mean, Bob Murphy said to somebody else, "Wow, who can match Gene Epstein's child? The FBI follows his mom around."
Right.
Everybody gets excited by that. Nobody shames me and says, and you're proud of your mom and she supported Joe Stalin, one of the greatest mass murderers of all time, and you're proud of that? I'm not proud of that. I tend to give her a pass because she sort of was well-intentioned. I tend to give most of them a pass. They were confused, well-intentioned. They weren't violent, and they were, for the most part, not too effective. So I tend to forgive them. But then if somebody wants to come after me and say, how can you forgive people who supported Joe Stalin? I have to say, well, yeah, you do have a point.